Welcome to all of you here and to those of you who are watching from home to the Malibu Democratic Forum for the LA County Supervisor candidates, Bob Hertzberg and Lindsey Horvath. For those of you at home, you've missed a little bit of good Democratic excitement. There's some really active protesters outside, and that delayed it starting a bit, but we're good with that. We're fine with protests. Before we start the forum, a lot of thanks are due for people that helped make this happen. It's deceptive, but it took a village to put this on. For starters, I'd like, and if you could, as I call out your name, if you could just take a quick bow, I'd like to thank the board members of the Malibu Democratic Club who are here today. Ted Vale, Lance Simmons. Lance Simmons is currently at the desk dealing with wait lists and others. David Kramer, our treasurer. Bill Swartout, who's a board member. Bill, do you hear us? He's back there working on technology and he can't hear us. Garen Kasoyan, who's also dealing with the front desk right now. I'd also like to, Garen just came in. I'd also like to thank Diane Landau and Lou Lamont, board members who couldn't be here today. And Lou, I know, is watching from home. Lou, you're really missing all the fun. And last but, wait a minute, let's wait till the door closes. Okay. Well, you know, this is also our first event post-pandemic. It's not post-pandemic. We waited for 2 years. And of course, we give our first event during a pandemic surge. Can we close the door, please? Can we close the door, please? Okay. Can those who just came in please get seated quickly? Thank you. Okay. Special thanks is owed to our incredible tech team who are here today. This is being live streamed for people who couldn't make it or didn't feel safe coming to an indoor event yet. First, I'd like to honor Mike Thomas, who is behind the camera there. He is a former CNN producer. Hap Henry, who's at the front desk dealing with things. And Bill Swartout, one of our board members, who is a computer science and artificial intelligence expert with USC. For those of you watching from home, if you do run into technical difficulties, I can assure you it's the internet or it's the equipment. It's not these guys. They're really, really good. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge our library staff. Many of them can't be here today, but Melissa Stallings, the library manager, Craig, Stephanie, and all the staff have been phenomenal. You can see Mike Thomas shaking his head yes. They set up these chairs you're sitting on. They make putting on an event here extremely easy. They'll take it down. Year in, year out, they've just been that fabulous. They do Malibu proud and they deserve the recognition. They're not here today because Melissa's on vacation and on Sunday, different staff the library, but they really deserve the recognition. Last but not least, I'd like to acknowledge a lot of the very prominent and active Malibu citizens who are here today. These are citizens who really take part in the civic life of Malibu, who give a lot of time, and they want to be here. And I'm just going to give a shout out to some of them. Paul Grisanti, our City Council Mayor. Jefferson Wagner is here somewhere, a former City Council and Mayor. Pamela Conley-Ulick, a former City Council person and Mayor. Laura Rosenthal, former City Council member and Mayor. Ann Deneen, the former president of the Malibu Democratic Club. Barry Haldeman, a lawyer in town who spends a lot of time helping citizens with fire issues and other issues. Bert Ross, a humorist, columnist with the Malibu Times. And I should say it's Bert's fault we're having this today because he bugged me until I said, okay, July 31st, once you guys said. Scott Talal, who is head of the Malibu Film Society, who brings a lot of good things to Malibu for life. And I think Don Schmitz was going to come, but I don't see him. So in any event. And finally, welcome Lindsey and Bob. I feel safe in saying that Malibu is very excited to have you here, not only because they got to protest, but because it was really the level of excitement when I put out the notice that you guys were able to come. First of all, we got the request to do this. Most of us is initiated. We initiate the candidate forums. I got several requests from the community to do it. They are anxious to meet you. They are excited you're willing to come. And why is that? It's because, and I should also state that in this audience, this is a nonpartisan forum. Nonpartisan forum, we have Republicans, Democrats, and why is that? Malibuites are really anxious to meet you, to get to know you. They want a real relationship with their LA City Council member. They don't feel like they've had it. Supervisor, I'm sorry. Been let. They are also excited and hopeful that with both of you, one of whom will be the LA City Council member, that kind of relationship. I'm sorry, board supervisor, still a little bit distracted. That with one of you, they will have that relationship in office. The public image that people have of Malibu, as you know, it's the playground of the rich and famous. It's a bunch of wealthy, self-absorbed, over-entitled NIMBYs, not in my backyard. We just want Malibu all to ourselves. We don't want anyone to come visit the beach here, even though we have millions of visitors every day and many weeks. And we don't have any real problems because we're so wealthy that how could we ever have any problems? That's, of course, not the truth. Couldn't be further from the truth. And I hope today that you begin to get to know Malibu, and we'll do what we can here to help. Most people who live here aren't movie stars. They're not investment bankers. They're teachers. They're contractors. They're plumbers. They're artists, actors, and musicians. They're the small business owners and students. There are the rich. There are the not so rich, and there are those that are struggling to get by. We have a significant elderly population here who have lived here for a lifetime, who love Malibu, and are not going to leave voluntarily until they die. So we do have elderly people we try to take care of here. It's a community that welcomes millions of people to the beach visitors every year. But that comes with problems, including crime, handling huge crowds for a small community, and other things. We're also a community at very high risk of fire, as you know. We probably have more experience fighting fires than any other county in Los Angeles, or any other city in Los Angeles. It's also a community of incredible resilience. When the Woolsey fire burnt half of Malibu to the ground, and I was here for that, it was amazing to witness the community that sprung up instantly out of the ether and put up relief centers weeks before FEMA could get here, provided food and supplies to everyone, and helped each other out. But it's also a community that needs its government representatives and needs its government to help it. And too often, we get no attention at all, in part because we're small. We understand we're like 9,000, 10,000 people after Woolsey. You've got, what, the 3rd district is how many million? More than 2. So that's one of the reasons we appreciate you're here. We realize we're small potatoes in terms of that. But it's also because we often get dismissed because we're Malibu. And we've had it said to our face. But when you dismiss us because we're Malibu, we're the rich and famous, you're basically saying, we don't have to pay attention to you. We don't have to bother with you. Your problems don't count. And so with that introduction to Malibu, let's get to know the two of you. Which of you would like to go first? I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves and then give us 3 to 5 minutes on who you are and why you're running. Lindsey, you want to go first? Okay. Welcome. Stand up, maybe, so we can. Yeah, stand up. I think you should stand up.
I love it. Community participation already, and I know that Bert's here, and he's a humorist, so he's going to help keep the joy in the room because we're going to have a lot of serious things to talk about today. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Lindsey Horvath. I'm a city council member in the city of West Hollywood, 2-time former mayor, and I currently chair the Liability Trust Fund Claims Board and Oversight Committee, which is a mouthful. It's also the board that oversees all of the deputy-involved incidents and claims of liability with the Sheriff's Department. Malibu is part of that. I'm also on the Clean Power Alliance Executive Board. Malibu is a part of that. I served as president of California Contract Cities Association not too long after Lou Lamont served as president. Shout out to Lou, who I know is watching from home. And I'm really grateful to be here with you. This is not quite an introduction to Malibu, but a further acquaintance. The last time I was with, one of the last times I was at a Malibu Democratic Club meeting, there was a lot of excitement about the Gobi and the lagoon and what was going on in Malibu. So I know that meetings can be contentious, they can be spirited, but they're very involved, and it's because you care. And I'm here because I care. In fact, I got into this race with a sense of urgency on the issues that matter most to people throughout this district, and chief among them being homelessness and housing. How do we keep people safe in our communities? Expanding our regional transportation network, making sure that we get our businesses back up and running and people into good jobs that afford themselves and their families a good quality of life in the wake of COVID and all that it's impacted. And of course, the existential threat of climate change, and making sure that this next county supervisor takes seriously fully implementing the county's sustainability plan, making sure that we have someone who's going to champion these issues, not just be a good vote, but somebody who also cares about connecting at the local level. That's what I've done for 15 years in my community, serving at the local level. In the organizations that I've mentioned, I've also served in leadership at the California and National League of Cities, president of Women in Municipal Government. So I've served at the local, regional, state, and national level, fighting for local issues, to protect local control, to make sure that neighborhoods get a say in what happens, because that's how you protect your quality of life. That's what I've done in my community, and that's what I'm prepared to do with you. I have, even before my service on the City Council, I worked to clear the backlog of untested rape kit evidence in the city and county of Los Angeles, working with the City Council and then Mayor Villaraigosa to make sure that there was full funding when it was identified by then City Controller Laura Chick, who is supporting me in this race, that there was a backlog of untested rape kit evidence to the tune of more than 7,000 kits. We built a grassroots coalition, worked with the City Council, and made sure the mayor funded this in his budget. And in fact, it was the only new line item in his budget, thanks to Mayor Villaraigosa. In the county, I worked with then Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky, who turned to the Sheriff's Department and said, what's going on here in the county? And in fact, at first, the county said, we only have 83 kits in the backlog. And it was because they defined backlog differently. They said if a prosecutor had requested a kit, that's what a backlog was. And so learning the technicalities, learning how to work within a bureaucracy and how to get things done, I worked with the Sheriff's Department and then County Supervisor to help clear the backlog of untested rape kit evidence in the county of Los Angeles. We have to work together to keep each other safe and make sure the systems that are in place to keep each other safe do exactly that. I've worked at the local level also in the Clean Power Alliance, making sure that we have clean energy and that we are expanding our clean energy resources. I've worked at the local level in many ways that have earned me the endorsement of many organizations, from the California Democratic Party to Planned Parenthood, to California Contract Cities Association, PAC, and more. But I'm here to listen to your concerns, to answer your questions, to be available, to be your partner and ally in how we shape the future of LA County, because it is essential that we work together in creating this vision. I'm not going to do it by myself. I've worked together in coalition, and in fact, I've built a strong, diverse coalition over the course of this campaign. It's not just about winning a campaign. It's how we work together, how you all have a seat at the table with me in the boardroom to help make sure that we make informed decisions in the county, that we bring people together, not further divide us. Clearly, people have a lot to say about what's going on right now, and it is an extremely difficult time. People are facing a lot, and they're counting on their leaders to step up for them. But I'm not going to do this by myself. So if you're expecting me to swoop in and be your savior, that's not who I am. I partner with you to make sure that all of the resources that you need, that the support that you need, that the lines of communication that you have are open and available and accessible to you, that you aren't overlooked. It's not about your numbers. It's about the issues. It's about making sure we sufficiently address those issues, that you know how to connect with the county and make sure that you have the resources to respond. And so I thank you for your time, for you being here today, and for being willing to engage, because that's the best way we're going to solve these problems across LA County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsey. We're going to have to share mics, unfortunately. Bob? Thank you for coming today, Bob.
Hold on, guys, I'm doing selfie. Come on. Smile. Love it. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Hertzberg, and thanks for inviting me. This is our first time we've seen we are candidates each other since the election. So this is important at 100 levels. I just thank you, everybody. What I want to do for my couple of minutes, if it's okay, is give you a sense of who I am. everybody in this room, the elected officials, know that there's a zillion rat-think politicians out there that get out there and they're great storytellers and they're great promisers. But what do we really do? Who are we and what are we about as people? And I want to give you a little sense of my story and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I'll answer specifics about issues and things like that among the ton of questions that I hope to get. And if I don't, I'll add them in at the end. I'm one of 5 boys. I was born in Los Angeles at Temple Hospital in downtown Los Angeles. Cedars-Sinai was too full at the time. And my parents came from Wisconsin. My dad from Racine, my mom from Milwaukee. My dad was at engineering school at Madison, and when the war broke out, became an ensign on a minesweeper. And my mom joined up as a nurse's aide, and they got married. My dad went to law school. They came out to California. All 5 of us boys were born here. And my dad was a constitutional lawyer. He was somebody who had always had a small firm, went to a big fancy school, but was always fighting for the little person. Always fighting for the little person. In 1954, women couldn't be bartenders. Everybody said that was okay. He said, hell no. Chinese people couldn't practice acupuncture because even though they had 5,000 years of experience, the Western medicine didn't like it. Native Americans who had these reservations in Arizona and Florida and San Diego and the like had no way to make money. 82% unemployment. People living in cardboard boxes. This is what we talked about around the dinner table. My mom was the kind of person, Bunny Hertzberg, who recently passed away, loved everybody, and everybody loved her. This is the janitors were at dinner at our house, no matter who it was, it didn't matter. She took care of everybody. After she raised all of us, she went to LA City College to get her degree, because she didn't have a degree early, and was beloved. She died just recently, almost at 97 years old. I didn't run for government until I was 42 years old. Why? I never thought I'd ever run for office. I'm a lawyer by training. I always like being behind the scenes to help make stuff happen and the like. And so I worked in South LA as a driver as a little kid for a guy named Merv Diamond. He was lieutenant governor, traveled all 58 counties and all 482 cities, worked for Leon Ralph and Bill Green and Julian Dixon and a whole host of people. Got chair of the Youth Commission when Congressman, Lieutenant Governor Dimely won, and he made me the chair, and I met this gentleman, Victor Grego, was a good buddy of mine. Got really involved in the East Side. Why did I do that? What I liked about politics was the human connection. Really important to me. You go to South LA, I got in trouble for hugging people. Those church ladies grab a hold of you, they don't let go. And I loved it, and I'm sorry. Right? In East LA, un abrazo. That's what you do in the community. And small communities, you could talk to people. In the West Side, we grew up off of Benedict Canyon, and it was a different kind of politics, and I like the personal stuff. And bottom line, I got frustrated because I helped so many people get elected, and I'd see them wear out a buzzing pair of shoe leather, and they get in these offices, supervisors who don't talk to anybody, because once they're elected, you can't touch them. They all give you the BS, but are they really showing up? Do they really do what they're supposed to do? So I got involved, and I decided to run, and when I got elected, the reason I was there, I built the Capital Institute to train all the staff, to train members. All of us need to learn and grow. I became speaker, and I got elected first time in 50 years unanimously. Why? Not because I'm some guy who sells out to the other party. Because I work with everybody. I respect people who got elected. People get in districts that I could never get elected to, and I respect the Constitution. So I got elected unanimously, worked hard, built $70 billion worth of schools, did a bunch of stuff, got out. And I got out during the energy crisis. I have energy crisis PTSD. And I got focused like crazy on energy issues. So what did I do? I went to South LA, I formed a solar company, the first and only solar company in Los Angeles on Martin Luther King Boulevard, and got in the game. Took it public in the UK, traveled the world, left the country basically on and off for 12 years, doing nothing but working on renewable energy. I came back in 2014. I haven't served that many years in government. It's been around a long time, helping a lot of groups. And so I came back. Cardenas and Padilla, if you know Congressman Cardenas and Alex Padilla, were driving me crazy, and I decided to run for 2 principal reasons at the time, and it's changed now. One, social justice. Rule of law, as you were just talking about, is critical. As I traveled the world, I saw how important those issues were. And secondly, climate change and renewable energy. Why? I was tired of these politicians that give you all these press releases and all this stuff, and they talk about this stuff. What have they actually done? How many pounds of carbon did they actually reduce? Did they actually make anything happen? That's what I do. That's what I did. I made my solar company powered by wind. I owned an electric car company in London. I did all this crazy stuff and was out of politics 15 seconds locally. Then I went, when I went in Assembly, in the Senate, but I had 3 jobs, really important, related to this. First, I was chair of the local government committee, dealt with all the local government issues. Second, I was chair of natural resources. Why? Because I continued to work on all the environmental issues, not the fancy press release stuff, because I don't do press releases. It was the hard work of figuring out resource adequacy and providers of last resort and that stuff. And the last thing, I became majority leader to be able to do the hard work, to lead everybody and put stuff together. I've stepped down as majority leader because I don't think it's ethical for me to be running for office and continue to be in that job. I think that you walk away from it, and I do the homework as I'm running for office. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to start the questions with a simple and quick question. I ask each of you to keep this answer to a minute so we can delve into a lot of other things. But this question is important. This question came from some of the questions that were submitted. Would you be willing, if you're elected, to commit to meet with Malibu citizens 1 hour a month to hear concerns so that we have a direct tie with you, not just through your assistance? Lindsey, 1 minute.
Without question, I understand the value of that FaceTime. I have shown up to city council meetings throughout the region and to hear and understand the concerns of different communities, and there's no reason I wouldn't do that here. It's important to me to hear from you. So,
Bob, 1 minute.
Yes, and I just wrote it down. What I do in a campaign is I have a promise book. My promise book says if I made a promise, I'm going to deliver. So I write this down. This will now go 1 hour, 1 month in Malibu. I would do it anyway, but I put it in the promise book because that's what I do, and I will make sure that it happens. And in my history, in terms of, I represent 1 million people. 1 million people across the San Fernando Valley, from Granada Hills to city of San Fernando, and I go to all the neighborhood councils. Recently, because of COVID, I couldn't before, but all the neighborhood councils and show up. It's my nature. I'm not going to be someone who hides, gets involved as a supervisor, and never shows up. I will absolutely do it.
Thank you. You want to hold that for a minute? Of all the questions we received, and we received many on many interesting, important topics, and we'll cover as many as we can today. The first, second, and third topic was fire, fire, and fire. Not surprising. Lindsey and Bob, I'm going to take a minute or two to give you the best sense I can of what it was like to live through the Woolsey fire, because we're not in Malibu at that time. You're not our elected officials. There are no words the most articulate people can come up with that will really ever be able to fully convey what it was like to live through one of the worst fires in California's history. And even seeing live news coverage, just like when you see a hurricane, it's not the same. Basically, it started on November 8th, 2018. The campfire started at 2:30. I'm going to make this quick for those of you in Malibu, but I think it's really important for our elected officials, particularly these two, walking into this, because we are still living in the physical and the emotional aftermath of the Woolsey fire. On November 8th, I think it was around 2:30 in the afternoon, the campfire broke out in Northern California. No, I'm sorry, that was earlier. Then the Hill Fire broke out in Ventura County. And it was about 2:30 in the afternoon, on, I think it was Thursday, November 8th, that the Woolsey fire broke out in Chatsworth, 50 miles away. They brought in super tankers, but super tankers can't be used after 5:30 in the evening. So the fire spread, the Woolsey fire spread from Chatsworth down the 101 corridor to West Hills and Westlake Village and Thousand Oaks. At 5:30 in the morning on November 9th, the Woolsey fire jumped the highway to this side of the highway near Mulholland Avenue. The fire department knew at that time, at 5:30 in the morning, that when it jumped, they couldn't keep it from crossing the 101. Given the winds, it would go through to Malibu. So they called up to get 5 or more strike teams. They needed more fire assistance, and the message came back, none available. So the fire chiefs involved knew that this fire was going to burn through to the ocean, knew that Malibu would burn to the ground, and knew they had no resources to do it with, to help. So they had to make a very nasty triage decision. Triage is not fun, not in the medical world because of COVID, and not in the fire world. Their number one priority is to protect life. So they made that decision. 5:30 in the morning. I know this because I interviewed the fire chiefs. To evacuate Malibu early because they knew Malibu could only evacuate through PCH. And it would take hours to get that done. And they pretty much achieved saving life. Only a couple people were killed. But what they told us was, please evacuate to help their first responders protect your property. And many of us did. But we knew something was odd because no fire equipment was coming up PCH as we were going out. Long story short, they made the decision at 5:30 that morning that there would be no property protection in Malibu. And in our neighborhood in particular, Point Dume, the fire entered our neighborhood right next to our fire station because our fire station had been assigned somewhere else to protect. And for 3 days, our fire station was the staging area for other fire stations. Our parking lot at Point Dume was the staging area for SCE and fire stations. But it was 3 days before we had firemen help us put out the remaining fires in Point Dume. During that time, the people of Malibu fought brilliantly and valiantly. I came back the next morning, we snuck back in and realized the situation, so we stayed. I met men who had stood on top of their houses all night long, burns on their arms, to save their house and others. All night long, they had stopped sheriff's cars as it went down the street to say, can you please send some help, please send some help. Nothing ever came. There was the adult son of a friend of mine that lives on Winding Way, whose father was up the street saving houses, and he said, can you please, saw fire engines and said, can you please come help us? And he literally told his son to call his next of kin. This is what we went through. When we drove back the second morning, it was like a movie set from the day after World War III. The clouds were gray and red and smoking, the hills were on fire. It was like nothing you can describe. So on top of, and so we were going through this. 600 structures, 400 units. Jefferson Wagner, who's here today, was injured himself and in the hospital. We understand why it happened. We understand that the firemen didn't want to let Malibu burn. We also understand they ran out of resources. But this community, 6 months, a year later, even today, but particularly at that time, was still going through the initial stages of getting back up on our feet. And during this time, our LA County supervisors pushed through a provision to camp in the hills above Malibu overnight. Not only was it ridiculously contrary to all facts and common sense, but as politicians, I had to wonder, what are they thinking? And it shocked the whole community, because even if it's cold camping, you know someone's going to bring a propane tank and cook some dinner. And so the community has been reeling from that ever since. You'll see that still this community cannot make sense of it. And there's also, everybody was traumatized. This very resilient community, but it's really hits you in the solar. Our house was spared. It was covered with ash, but it was spared. But to drive around your neighborhood and see so many houses burned down, and then 3 weeks later see somebody else's house you didn't know it burned down, it's like getting hit in the solar plexus. So I give you that background. I normally don't speak so much as a moderator, but I think it's really important for you to understand that this city, and then we were hit by the pandemic while we were still getting back on our feet, okay? So with that in mind, I want you to understand the questions you're going to get, some of the passion you may hear. For starters, would you reverse the camping ordinance? And if so, how? Who wants to take the first stab at that? Lindsey, is it okay for Bob to go first this time?
I don't care.
Go ahead.
What do you?
Go ahead. You've got the microphone.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, and yes. How much time do I have for the question? 2 minutes? Oh, you're less. I'll make it faster. Yeah, look, the traumatized... I was talking to Pam Fairs, a dear friend of mine from the SEIU union, and she was telling me about how she wakes up in the middle of the night because she's so worried about fire. And these memories as a human being hit you. When I was a little kid, we lived in the Benedict Canyon area, and I remember Bel Air fire. I don't know if anybody remembers the Bel Air fire, everything burning. And I'm telling you, I'm a little boy, and we see the flames on the hill. And the whole community down the valley where I was are evacuating. My mother is taking that station wagon, loading as much stuff with all the kids and the stuff on the top of the station wagon to go to my grandma's house over in the Fairfax district, and we were scared to death. I wasn't here. I don't know what you went through, but I can tell you that I share that personal story because it's embedded in who I am. When I talk to people, Mr. Gaines in the back, who was the mayor of Calabasas at the time, and he was out there fighting the fires, I did not engage. And I'll tell you what, in the community as much. As majority leader, one of the responsibilities you have, ethical responsibilities, is to back up your members, take care of your members. Henry did a brilliant job. He was here. He was out in the community. He went over at the high school and met with people and listened to folks and did what he was supposed to do. And we backed him up. And in the legislature, we just put $800 million for fire suppression into the budget. We paid for specific teams. In addition, when you say you didn't have the resources, with us, I was part of this as majority leader, and Henry was a very important part of this, put a bunch of money in for additional teams, 24-hour teams for LA County, so we have the resources, so you don't have the problem that you had when you pick up the phone and you call. And I share with you that the only other thing is that we all have our respective experiences, and you can judge who you want to vote for as a consequence, and look at each of our respective backgrounds and comparing us. I just tell you that one of the things, the state is an interesting thing. Every one of the 58 counties in California is a subdivision of the state. And so, we had the Paradise Fire, 800 structures, I can't remember the numbers, the whole city just boom, burned down. A whole host of other things, and we're dealing with these kinds of issues. And it forms you.
Closer, we've got a lot of competition, hold the mic closer.
Okay.
Better.
They close that door out there? No? So in any event, it helps inform you and give you better understanding and the interrelationship, because so many of the issues, everybody wants to say, oh, you're a state politician, blah, 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 blah. I get it. It's a fair call. Everybody wants to beat you up. But the truth of the matter is that if you understand how those mechanics work, you have a tremendous ability to get resources and get things done. Just like we brought these additional strike teams to Los Angeles County, which we couldn't otherwise do. And in so many other areas, I'll explain it to you hopefully in response to questions. But A, the message is, I get it. B, I will be here. C, that we're going to do things in real ways that have real impacts that help the community.
I hate to interrupt you, but the question is,
Camping.
would you reverse the overnight
Yeah, I said
camping
yes,
thing?
yes, 3 times.
If so, how? The other question is,
You need
this
2
could
votes. It's real
Do you
simple.
think you can get 2 votes?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've had conversations. I think I get 2 votes if I'm
And
on the board.
I'll give Lindsey the opportunity too. Do you?
I get 3 votes if I'm on the board.
The second thing is the Coastal Commission then took away you have to get it through the Coastal Commission. How are you going to get it through the Coastal Commission?
As Speaker, I appointed 4 of the members of the Coastal Commission. I know most of them. No, back in the old days, I appointed good people, Bert. Back in those days. I know how it works. It's a state entity. It's another example of the interrelationship and understanding and having, beyond the platitudes, of understanding who to talk to and how to actually get stuff done. I know who to go to. I know most of the staffers, and I will do whatever it takes. And I've been very successful in my correct record so far of making stuff happen. That's the bottom line. I know how to make stuff happen. I will deliver. Huh? Yeah, I've known Joe Edgerton for 30 years.
Lloyd, put your mask back on.
Maybe longer.
Thank you. Lindsey, what's your position on this?
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm endorsed by 4 of the supervisors, so I know how to get the votes and know how to work together with them. But I also know that it is important for us to look at these issues and work with the community on finding the right solutions. I know that LA County Planning proposed much stricter restrictions, some of which were then reversed by the Coastal Commission. And as you started to hear from my opponent's answer, he either is in charge or he's not in charge. When I have the authority to be in charge, I'll actually deliver results. He's up in the state, and it was the Coastal Commission that rolled back some of what was proposed by LA County, and yet he didn't get involved, but he did get involved, but he didn't get involved. With me, you'll get a straight answer and direct consequences and solutions and how we'll work together on this. You work with the regional planning and make sure that the LCP is updated to ensure that you don't have to trust regional planning. And I've checked in with them to make sure that there are no existing permits, there are no proposed plans for permits. And so we need to continue to make sure that there is no camping in this area. But you shouldn't just take my word for it, or anyone who sits in this seat. You shouldn't take staff's word for it. We need to codify it. And so that is a priority, top priority for me, to work with you to make sure that the language that we need in the LCP is there. So regardless of who holds this seat, on an ongoing basis, you can count on that protection from the county and from the state. We need to make sure that we increase the number of park rangers, both national and state. It's another thing my opponent could have had a hand in doing, hasn't done it for you. When I have the authority to actually deliver results for you, you can count on me making that happen. And I'll work with you so you understand what the changes are that we're making in the policy. You'll understand how they get implemented, and we'll work together so that way there are no questions about what happens. I just had a fire in my building, so I understand intimately the threat that fire poses. I had to be that first responder in many ways as a council member to my neighbors in the building. And I also had to make sure that I was safe. And it made me aware of what needs to happen and how we as a community need to help people prepare in a time of crisis. I also, during the Woolsey fire, our community backed up the city of Malibu and the EOC. Your city manager directly called me and my city manager on many occasions to back up the efforts that the city of Malibu was engaged in. So while I wasn't living it on the ground, our community was supporting your community and our resources were directed there. Our chief, Drew Smith, who I know came to Malibu, Alan Averill was one of the firefighters in our station who's now out here in Malibu. We've shared resources, and so I've understood intimately from their experience and their perspective what is required. That is how you respond. Now it's time to learn from those lessons, be proactive, invest in the resources and care and support that the community needs so we're prepared, because we know that that won't be the last fire. We need to make sure that we're prepared, proactive, and engaged on the issues, and making sure that we're working with you to harden your homes, to make sure there are investments in hardening your homes. That's what we need to do to make sure that people are safe and that we are dealing with the impact of the climate crisis. On the broader level, we also need to make sure that the LA County sustainability plan is fully implemented so we reverse the impact of climate change. And there's a reason I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters, and why California environmental voters have said that my opponent is one of the worst in terms of the environment and environmental protection at the state. We need somebody who's going to take these issues seriously, work proactively, and be in partnership with you on the ground to make sure communities are safe. And that's exactly what I have done and will continue to do
Lindsey,
in partnership with you.
Follow-up question for you. Again, community's looking for concrete answers.
Yes,
You recently made a statement about your position on fire.
yes.
And I'll say one other, this community strongly supported Sheila Kuhl for a long time. And with all due respect to Sheila, she lost a lot of support in the community because of her actions and inactions after the Woolsey fire. And so I'm not, this is not my personal view, I'm reporting on what's out there in the community. Sheila's endorsed you for office. This worries a lot of people because of the influence she could have on you in your fire actions, because the actions she's taken on fire have been disastrous for this community.
We can't hear you back.
I'm sorry, is my mic not working? I will repeat it. Sheila Kuhl has endorsed you. This worries a lot of people in the community that you would take positions similar to Sheila because you would owe her because she helped you get elected. And so, you know, she's the one that helped pass overnight camping. What are you going to do about overnight camping?
As I said, it is a top priority. It is a top priority. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
It is a top priority for me to make sure that this is codified directly in the LCP. And because of the experience that you all have had in the community, and because of what I've seen happen with the Coastal Commission reversing what was proposed by the county, I now have that experience to learn from to make sure that we actually get it right this time. You'll notice Sheila Kuehl isn't in the room. I am not Sheila Kuehl, and he is not running against Sheila Kuehl. He is running against Lindsey Horvath. I am running on my record. I am running on my experience. I am running on the things that I have done in my own community and throughout the region. And I am running on the experience that I have had working with members of your community to understand and listen to your issues and to take action directly to make that change. If you have questions for the supervisor, I would direct them to her. I am not her, and I intend to make sure that we reverse course on the things that did not deliver to Malibu, period.
Thank you. Another related question for both of you about fire preparedness. The Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and the MRCA are the largest landholder adjacent to Malibu. Let's be honest. The firestorm came right over those mountains and right through those lands that have not been adequately, action has not adequately been taken to protect against fire. Not only in Malibu, but I can speak also for many people in the Palisades. They feel like their county supervisor represents the MRCA and not them. What would you do? What would you do to press the MRCA to start doing more fire preparedness, whether you have goat herds, fire breaks, and the like? Let me give it to Bob. So.
Good, thank you. Can I just add one thing here? I think it's really important. I want to be as gracious and appropriate as possible, but the thing I would share with you, and you put it in your own judgment as you do, this current supervisor is not just a mild endorsement. Every day she's calling every one of the people that support me and saying, don't do it. She's going out and meeting. She is not, there's just some minor relationship in terms of the candidacy every single day. These missives of stuff that, a Lochenkopf for the Yiddish clubs in the room. You've got to be crazy, this stuff that's coming. It's not a minor thing. And so when these things happen, why wasn't that person, my opponent, a voice in that regard? What's happening? I just put that out there because this is not a minor issue. It is not somebody who's not there. It's just not, there's a lot of people that endorse a lot of people. I'll talk about the environmental stuff, but the answer about the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and the like is, look, Joe Edmonston, who I've known forever, I used to be chair for and a member for 20 years of the Mulholland Tomorrow Group with Don Henley and a whole bunch of people. Way back when, before I ever got elected and when I became speaker, I still stayed in the board. So I was really interested in preserving and acquiring more land. But the truth of the matter is, beyond the platitudes, is it's all about the money, okay? I mean, I had a big beef, me and Ben Allen had a big beef with Edmonston because they were overcharging people for fines because he was looking for a revenue stream to pay for stuff. What happens in real terms is that we collect all this land, we put up all this money, but the operational piece is never around. That's the real problem. How do you pay for that? And they're always coming to us asking for money at the state. County doesn't give them money. So, and what are those funding streams? How do you create a dedicated funding stream to make that work? That is the framework and where to get that money. So, a lot of the money that Henry was involved with, and I give him a lot of credit for it, is getting revenue streams that work to be able to fund this. We put a ton of money into the conservancies to be able to pay for this kind of stuff. So it is a detail that is often boring, but it is the reason why this problem occurs. And so we've been creating these, at the state level, a dedicated revenue stream for the conservancy so that they can pay for fire protection, they can pay for clearances, and all the other things that are necessary to prevent the challenges that you've extraordinary catastrophe that
Follow up one sentence answer. Once you get elected, and I'll explain in a minute, this community very much supports the mission of the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. We appreciate what they do. What we don't like is when they act badly, and they do act badly, and everybody knows it. I suspect even Joe knows it.
Yep.
When the MRCA is acting as a bad actor, who do you represent, the people or the MRCA?
People.
Okay. Lindsey?
Can't hear you.
People. Got that?
So what are you going to do when Joe's acting? Here's what Joe does. And
I
Lindsey,
know
I'll
what he
give you
does.
the
I've been
opportunity
through it
to answer
100
this.
times.
Yeah, it's not a secret.
There's no secret.
No, here, go ahead. Who do you represent, the MRCA or the people?
Absolutely the people. And you just heard that he's giving state funding to the MRCA. That money could be conditioned with consequences and action that actually deliver for Malibu residents. If it,
It
and
is.
so
it is.
and
Force the coastal
on
commission not to back him up, and you have to figure out how to get the other 6 votes that you don't have as a Democrat to back it up, because Joe does whatever he wants. He just tore down a gate, put up a new
Okay.
one, and the city can't do anything to the coastal commission.
We'll get there.
And
We'll-
now we're gonna fight with
right.
them forever. How are you, both of you, not just you, sorry, how are you guys gonna get the coastal commission to back up Malibu? Because the LCP is great, but they only like it when it benefits them. When it doesn't benefit them, then they back up the other person. Sorry, I couldn't.
Okay, I'm
It's
gonna,
all right.
I'm gonna hold off on that because we're gonna get to that issue. Thank you for that input. As long as we're there, let's go into that issue. The views of this community are not unique to this community. We just have them as a bigger neighbor than many. What happens is Joe Edmondson takes action in order to achieve his goals, which we support his goals. He will take action that is illegal, not supported by the law, and then, in other words, he will do it, and then he'll force individual landowners to wreck themselves financially on legal fees to fight him if you don't want it. And we have several examples of this happening in Malibu time and time
Sycamore
and time
Canyon
again.
right now.
Sycamore Canyon, Puerco Canyon, there's a long story. With these situations, if you represent us and not Joe, when Joe is being a bad actor or the MAC, what are you going to do to be on the side of the Malibuites fighting this? There are people in this room that have fought this very situation, and it destroys their lives because it's their neighbor. You don't go home at night with relaxed. You're stressed because of what Joe's threatening to do in your neighborhood.
The ongoing maintenance of some of these areas can become through collaboration, the jurisdiction of the National Park Service. The reason that they continue to go to the state is because there are also state park rangers that patrol this area. So that is funded by the state. But there are ways that we can make sure that that funding and those resources come up with develop an ongoing management plan to ensure that it's not just about purchasing these properties to protect them as open space. We have to have concrete plans of how ongoing management will protect the neighborhoods. And we have to make sure that Malibu residents have a seat at the table in those conversations. We've seen, and I know I don't need to tell you, how private property gets impacted because of access that's then created once these properties are purchased. And so we need to make sure that there are plans that are developed to address those impacts and that there's ongoing management plan to ensure that these areas are handled in the right way and that there is ongoing oversight, and that is offered through the state and national park rangers. And so by taking over some of the MRCA area into their jurisdiction, we'll have better oversight and oversight that is directly accountable to the community.
Thank you. Bob?
I'm not a Joe Edmondson hater. I think he's done a lot of good stuff for a lot of people. I think he has. I think a lot of folks have overreached. I'm sorry, I'm a realist. My job is to get stuff done. As Speaker of the Assembly, I cannot tell you how many times you go and you engage. Look, this is the reality of getting stuff done. People complain to me because I fought for the Valley. You're damn right I fought for the Valley because they're the people I represented. And if I represented Fresno, their streets would be paved with gold. I just delivered zillions of dollars to the Valley, and I'll do the same thing for you. And with Edmonston, I know how he works. It's real simple. He respects power. He respects power. And I know how to exercise it. And I know in terms of being a leader in the House and what you got to do, and to build the 31 members of the delegation of LA County and what you got to do and how you leverage to make things happen. I think the interrelationship between the county and the city, county and the state has been horribly mismanaged. I think there's unbelievable opportunities. We have reached out so many times to do things with the county, and my head spins how bad it is. There is opportunity to exercise it. And I'm telling you, the bottom line is Joe Edmondson will respond. I know, I've dealt with him before. Me and Ben Allen did the exact same thing on the traffic ticket stuff he did up there in the hills. He knows how to work with him, and we can make it work.
Thank you. Before we move into crime and safety, a couple last fire questions. We got a question that was submitted to us. After the Woolsey fire, the LA County Fireworks District 29 committed to replacing our most undersized water mains and increasing the size of our substandard water tanks. It's been almost 4 years, and only one half of one of the area projects has been done. The other scheduled items have been slipped 2 years at last notice. What can you do to prioritize these safety upgrades?
Sure, we need to invest resources and work with the community. I understand that there were some resources that were cited in neighborhoods that got feedback from the neighborhoods they weren't the right locations. So we need to work with communities to get to yes, find the right places for these resources to exist, and make sure that they are safe in terms of fires and hardened for fires. I know that when there were power shutoffs, that water was not able to get to a lot of the residents. There weren't generators that were able to get water out and to help put out the fires. So there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be invested in, and that's what I was referring to earlier. We have to learn from what happened and directly invest in the proactive measures that are necessary, so we have those resources in your community. So at the time of crisis, we're not looking for those answers. We already have them embedded in your communities.
I'm not going to give you an opinion on something I'm not knowledgeable about. I don't know enough about the pipe and how it works. I'm sorry, I don't. If I did, I would tell you. I will always tell you what I know, and I'll tell you what I don't know. But what I will tell you is that the way you fix these things is, you know, yes, you collaborate, yes, you build trust. All of those things are critical. But it's about the money, and it's about prioritizing the money, right? And so whether it's bond revenues, if there's some sources of bond revenues, a ton of money out there for all sorts of bond revenues. There's a bunch of pots of money at the federal money that we could analyze, a bunch of money at the pot at the state level, or alternatively, we can put stuff in a budget trailer bill at the state level, or whatever it is, do we need the money to get it done? I don't have enough specifics to answer it intelligently, and I'm not going to speculate on that. But the bottom line is, if it's a priority, set a process together, and I can tell you where to find the pots of money to get it done.
Thank you, Bob. The last thing is we'll have questions for later. But keep the question, Gary. It should be good. One person from the audience did ask me, for your benefit, how many people in the room have ever lost their house to a fire? Can you raise your hands?
Repeat the question.
How many people in the room have ever lost their house to a fire? How many people in the room's neighborhood has ever been on fire? Look at that, almost everyone. Right. Okay. In moving on, another big issue, and Lindsey, could you hold that for me? Thank you. Another big issue right now is, of course, crime, as it is in many places. Crime is on the rise in Malibu. Home burglaries don't get reported that often, but actually it's bad. Car burglary is common, and there was recently the attendant at the gas station at Heathercliff was shot. I think he survived, but he was airlifted. Yeah, no, it was bad. Most citizens in Malibu want our police to act with utmost integrity. We give the police special powers. We give them the power to take away someone's liberty. We give them the power to use guns. So they should be held to a higher standard of conduct, and we want them to be the best of the best. At the same time, we also realize that the police are our first responders. They're our first responders who put their lives on the line every day, and they're our first responders, the only first responders that get no real appreciation for what they do. Having said that, it's a balancing act. Also, when you don't enforce, when you don't go after crime effectively, criminals know this, the gangs know this, they know where the loopholes are, and they'll take advantage of it. They don't really want to get caught. So crime is a real problem, and with that in mind, these kind of questions came in from our community. Sheila Kuhl voted to cut the budget of the sheriff. Do you support that position? And do you support recalling Mr. Gascon, the DA? We can do that, whichever. Go ahead.
In reverse order, I don't support the recall of George Gascon. I don't support any recalls. I think we've spent far too much money on politics and not enough on our community and on the issues that people care about the most. So that's where I think we should be spending our money, our time, and our resources. We absolutely need to fully invest in law enforcement to make sure that they have the resources they need to fight violent crime. I've done that at the local level, and I've worked directly with the Sheriff's Department. As I mentioned earlier, I also serve on the Liability Trust Fund Claims Board and Oversight Committee. So I have seen the millions of dollars that have been spent on when we ask the Sheriff's Department to respond to issues for which they are not uniquely trained, and we don't set them up to succeed. Those are dollars that could be better spent training our law enforcement, proactively investing in security measures, and also enhancing the security measures that we have in our communities. I fully support. I also support enhancing that service by making sure that we're addressing the issues we're seeing of mental health crisis, of homelessness and crisis in our communities, and making sure that we have outreach teams to address those issues. So our law enforcement officials are directly investing their time, effort, resources, and energy on the issues that matter most, and the things that they're uniquely trained to do. So I think employing security ambassadors and mental health professionals to do that outreach work in some cases is important. Just like Malibu developed their volunteer program under Lou Lamont with the Sheriff's Department to expand services and provide resources to the community, so there were more personnel out in the community to do this work. We've done that in my community, and I've seen in contract cities like ours that contract for that service how we make the most of every dollar that we have to spend to keep people safe, because that is the #1 priority. But I want to talk about, just to put a finer point on it, I had a very personal experience in my community where we had a sexual predator on the loose in my community. He was preying on very vulnerable people. He was torturing them and ultimately killing them in our community. My colleagues didn't want to stand up on it because they had taken this man's money for their elections. The district attorney didn't want to take action on it because she had also taken his money in her elections. So I had to work with community to work with our law enforcement officials. It was our law enforcement officials who worked with the federal government to make sure that this predator was put behind bars. And that predator was Ed Buck. You might have heard about him in the headlines. He's now in federal prison, found guilty on 9 counts, because our community stayed committed on this issue. I worked with the people in the community and with our Sheriff's Department to ensure that justice was served. And we have to make sure that there is no more Ed Buck. That's why we need to invest the resources that are needed in our law enforcement. That's why we have to work together on these issues and take them seriously. And we have to make sure that we're working in community so that everyone is kept safe and we're fighting these issues together.
Lindsey, thank you. If I could ask you one follow-up question while you have the mic. You have gotten very good marks for your work in West Hollywood, but it was reported recently that you voted to defund the police in West Hollywood. So I thought I'd give you an opportunity to talk about that while you were here.
Sure. So that's not exactly accurate. I know that the sheriff and our mayor, who are both running for re-election, want to tell a different story, but what we actually did, the defund movement is about canceling the contract with the sheriffs. We didn't do that. The defund movement is about taking money away from the sheriffs to invest directly into services and care. We didn't do that. In fact, we added a deputy in our entertainment policing area to increase that patrol. Our staff proposed in our budget that we take the money for that deputy out of the supplemental budget we typically give to our captain. I said absolutely not. Our captain needs that money. Whenever there is a choice that he has to make, he needs that resource to be able to turn to. So we fully funded his supplemental budget, almost $1 million. In addition, we hired 30 unarmed security ambassadors to patrol our neighborhoods on top of hiring additional security ambassadors in our commercial areas. We've been increasing hiring our security ambassadors. The city took over the contract in 2013, but they've been in our city all the way back since 2003. And they were brought by our business community to enhance the service, just as I mentioned earlier, your volunteer program does enhance the service of the Sheriff's Department here in Malibu. So that's actually what we did. We have a bigger contract now with the Sheriff's Department, and we are expanding resources and investing more in keeping people safe.
Thank you very much. Bob, it's your turn.
Yeah, no, I would not
Do you support the recall and cutting the budget?
Yeah, cutting the budget, no, I do not. And I just would ask people to do the follow-up homework. It's a very bright audience. People are very interested and engaged. And all I would just suggest to you is just to do the follow-up, because I go, there's a number. Look, I know who I am. I'm comfortable in my skin, okay? I've taken over 20-some thousand votes, all this theoretical stuff. Every one of these tough fights, I've been in the middle of all of them. And, people like you or don't like you. It is what it is. But there's so many Democratic clubs that exist around the county that I won't go to. You know why? Because they ask me, will I support to defund the police? Well, they ask me if I'll take support from the police. And when I say yes, I'm disqualified. And my opponent's getting supported by them. I know what she said, because I don't go to those things, because I'm not doing that thing. But I'm supported by every single law enforcement group that exists in the county, from police chiefs to sheriffs to LA to San Fernando to Beverly Hills to Santa Monica. Now, why? I'm the guy that did bail reform. But I'm also the person that helped work on decertification last year with the chair of the Black Caucus. I'm also the person that worked on reforming chokeholds and deputy gangs legislation that we did. Why? Because you can still have to have police. The nature of the crimes that are affecting people today, just like to some extent along the fires, are so impactful. The follow home crimes, the smash and grabs. I have people that won't go out in the public. It's horrible. I told people in Westlake Village and a girl stuff, I'm going to take those folks that she's getting rid of in West Hollywood and I'm bringing them out to Lost Hills. We can ask that those sheriffs get moved. But I'm told the incumbent won't let that happen. I'm for law enforcement. They need to be available. I'm beat up by people on the left because I engage in that supporting law enforcement. So that's number one. Two, Gascon. The other thing that my opponent didn't tell you is that she has endorsed Gascon for re-election, and she has been endorsed for her candidacy by Gascon. I supported, whatever, it's the truth. It's on the website, you can see it. I supported Jackie Lacey last time. And I thought she was great. I worked with her every year on mental health reform issues in the jail. She was phenomenal to work with. I know there were some issues with her, but I don't like these political DAs. I like people. I liked about her. She never was political. She made mistakes because she wasn't political, but she was great, and I supported her. And as to the recall, look, it's hard because I agree with my opponent in the sense that I don't believe in these recalls. They cost a bunch of dough. And the reality is, people voted for him. He didn't lie. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do when she endorsed him. I'm going to let these people out. I'm going to do all this stuff. I was pissed because he opposed me on the bail stuff in his court case, and it caused all this stuff to go on the ballot, which caused all these problems. So, no, I don't want to see the recall happen, because I think the reality is people are getting what they asked for. I think it's accuracy here, and also with respect to the issue of law enforcement, is really important, because they know that I'm an adult in the room. They know that I work with them and I listen and I do the homework, but I'm not a weather vane politician. I'm not going with the wind, depending upon where the wind blows. That's not what I do. My record is strong. It speaks for itself. You can like it or not like it, but that's where I stand.
Thank you. The next question related to law enforcement is, as we all know, Sheriff Villanueva came out openly against the decision of the LA County Board of Supervisors on their health mandates. They made their decision, and then he said, we're not going to enforce it. If this happened when you are elected to the LA County Board of Supervisors, how would you handle it? And secondly, do you think the LA Board of Supervisors should be able to dismiss a sheriff even though he's elected?
The first question was about the mask mandate?
Well, you may recall that Sheriff Villanueva came out after the LA County Board of Supervisors made their decisions on various, not just mask mandates, but health mandates related to the COVID pandemic. He basically said, well, the sheriff's office isn't going to enforce it. So he was squarely and straightforwardly basically standing up against the decision. And is his job to make the policy, to enforce the policy? And if this happened, when you got elected, how would you handle it? And the last question is, would you support the power, if it was voted on, for the LA County Board of Supervisors to dismiss a sheriff, even though he's elected?
So the sheriff talks a good game on a lot of things, and I hear some of his quotes coming out of my opponent's mouth. But what actually happened in communities that were enforcing these issues, we worked with our sheriff station on enforcement. So the sheriff might not have wanted his rank and file members to be involved, but they were. They actually took action. But that isn't where we should be prioritizing law enforcement resources. That's why we have security ambassadors who can go out in the community, and you have your volunteer program, and other communities have these additional resources to go out and help with these services. And we all have code enforcement, for example, to also help in enforcing the policies that we have in our own communities and that we're required to follow under the county. So that's actually who should be enforcing. And as it relates to the ballot measure, your question was?
Well, it was the fact that there's there was some talk about giving the LA County Board of Supervisors power to remove a sheriff. Even
That's that's going to be a ballot measure on the ballot in November, and you all will get to decide whether that's the power that you want the County Board of Supervisors to have. From what I've heard in the conversation, the discussion is that the sheriff, who is directly elected, would then be able to be removed by a 4/5 vote of the Board of Supervisors. And if you want to have a directly elected sheriff, if you think that that's an important role to have an elected office, that is a check on that seat if you would so choose it. The chief of police in Los Angeles, for example, is hired directly by the mayor and city council in the city of Los Angeles. So there are different ways of holding that position. It's a way to hold the position accountable if you so choose. For me, I would prefer that we have a working relationship between the sheriff's department and the county board of supervisors. That's what I've been doing at the local level, and that's what I'm committed to do as a supervisor for this district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The issue of the mask mandate, let me tell you, this is not just a sheriff problem. When I talk to the firefighters who are supporting me, by the way, after they supported Henry, and now they're supporting me, they said the same thing. The SEIU 721, which is the largest union, they told me the same thing. And what that was that the culture of the Board of Supervisors was this top-down, we're in control and we'll give you mandates and we're going to tell you what to do. No one ever called and talked to people. No one engaged in an honest conversation to figure out how we can make it work. Were there reasons that there were changes, or were there certain circumstances where people shouldn't wear masks, or you could reassign them or the like? And so what happens is it creates this culture of this press conference pointing fingers in people's eyes, and whether someone's elected or not, you can't govern that way. The reason I was elected unanimously as Speaker, the reason why I meet every single time before a floor session with the Republicans is to tamp down the noise, try to find common ground. It doesn't mean that we have to agree, but just to treat people with respect and how you deal with them. And so I would suggest that one of the reasons why it became so bad, and again, it was all over the place, because as I've endorsed by the Labor Federation of over 100 unions or whatever it is, I don't know, but to have that level of communication that's so important. And so I suspect that there was ways to work it out. So the answer to the question for me is I wouldn't have just gone and give this mandate. I'd go talk to the various departments and figure if there's a process we get it done. The second part of the question was the dismissing of the supervisors having the power to get rid of the sheriff. Again, this is another, what worries me is it's political blah blah, right? The Constitution of the state of California sets up the laws as it relates to charter law counties and general law counties, for the judges to be in the room. You guys, the way it works is sheriffs are elected in most of the 58 counties, period. We had a ballot measure in 1978 that said, wait a second, what was the relationship of these counties and how they work in terms of sheriffs? I'm concerned. I'm not a fan of this person who's currently an incumbent, but I'm not going to go and scream, because if he gets elected, I'm going to have to work with the individual. But I think it looks eminently political to say, okay, right before an election, we're going to put this on the ballot and the like. And it seems to me that look, ultimately the voters will always decide. You always have the power to make whatever decision you want. But I think an honest assessment of what's really happening is it's further exacerbating this war between these individuals, which is not solving problems. And our job is to fix stuff, not to scream at each other within our departments, not to scream at federal government, state government, county government, city government. Taxpayers are writing the check. Figure it out, fix it, or get the heck out of the way. That's my theory.
Thank you. One last quick question on this, and then we'll move on for both of you. Isn't the situation with Villanueva and the County Board of Supervisors, isn't getting reminiscent of Gates and the mayor when things really became a mess in Los Angeles? You know, when they weren't working very well together. And is the sheriff there to make policy or to enforce the law? Quick answer so we can move on to the next one.
Well, it would be nice if he were there to enforce the law, because I know a lot of people have concerns about crime, and it's certainly gone up on his watch. I would like to have a sheriff who's genuinely interested in working on solving these problems, working with the Board of Supervisors, which funds the work of the Sheriff's Department, and working with the communities in which their stations are based to address the issues on the ground that people are facing. I know that you're facing them here in Malibu, and it would be great if we could get some help for your station. I know on PCH, it would be great if there was additional CHP help. You've been having street racing issues and speeding issues. That's something my opponent could help you with, and again, hasn't helped and stepped up and enforced. So when you have me as your supervisor, you will know that the power that I have, the resources that I have access to, I will use fully to the benefit of your community and work with you on the ground to understand the issues that you're facing. That's what our sheriff should be doing. It's what your supervisor should be doing. And I will partner with your city council and your neighborhoods to make sure that the resources of the county, the social safety net that you're counting on in the county, actually supports you. And that includes the sheriff's department.
Thank you. Bob, 1 minute or so.
Enforcement. I mean, really, the idea of a sheriff at all levels of government is to enforce the law. They're not there to make policy. Those are done with other branches of government.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one last question on homelessness, and then I'm going to turn it to the audience. We all know that not only Malibu, but Los Angeles in general, Los Angeles County, we have one of the worst homeless problems in the country. Most people in Malibu are very sympathetic to the plight of the homeless, and we want to help them. We're certainly willing to do our part. But I think anyone who's studied the issues knows that Malibu can't tackle this huge metro area. Hold on. Okay, I'll wait till the door's closed.
That's right. We're going to protest your houses too, just like Sheila Cools.
Okay.
We did her house for over a week.
Okay, just 1 minute. Can you tell Garen to let no more people in here? So, back to this. If we can just get the door closed.
We're going to press criminal charges on all of you. You think it's a joke, right? I'm sure all of you are laughing in there.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Homelessness. Basically, there's a huge sympathy for the homelessness in Malibu, but we can't do it by ourselves. It seems fairly obvious. There's got to be a citywide and a countywide task force where you actually bring leaders from each of the cities together to put together a plan. Because if we do something for the homeless there and it's not solved elsewhere, we're not going to solve the homeless problem. What are your plans for the homeless? On this, I'll let Bob go first because you've gone faster than the last one.
Yeah. LA County is 88 cities. What happens in cities all across the place, and by the way, the state, LA County has 88 cities. Can you hear me now? Yeah. And in addition to the 88 cities, I mean, the state does the same problem. Somebody will be under an underpass and it's part of the state, you know, Department of Transportation, Caltrans, and they'll move them to the city. And there hasn't been a realistic regional approach. And all this idea about plans, blah, 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 blah. It's like more noise. The city and county county comes up with something. They have a blue ribbon commission. You know what the blue ribbon commission says? We need 39 more months to study this. Are you kidding me? And the city of Los Angeles says, sorry, we're not involved because we don't like what you're doing. I hate to use it again, but a hole in your head. It's crazy. This involves everybody. You can't keep moving people. And my opponent has a city where she says she solved homelessness. When you look at the city records of the 80 people that were there, and now it's up, they're just moving them to LA, they're moving them to Glendale, they're moving them to other places. They finally bought a hotel with $6 million of our money from the state, but it's finally starting to do stuff. It is a coalitional thing. When I put together the Speaker's Commission on Regionalism, because we all work together. So the bottom line is, A, settle a lawsuit. It's stupid. Fights between governments, as I said, dumb, dumb, dumb. 2, Create a body where elected officials like the MTA are held responsible. Right now, they're just pushing it around. Everybody's calling a press conference and blaming everybody else and pointing the fingers. Do you know not only is there $1 billion sitting there for mental health, there's another $1 billion we just approved and another $1 billion to train at community colleges mental health professionals. The reason I'm running for this office is because my head is exploding that we spending all this money, giving it to locals. The county is the entity that does this, and it's crazy what's happening. On homelessness, on crime, nothing's going down. And everybody's pointing fingers, and I'm talking to department heads, and this department doesn't do this, and this department doesn't do that. Why that's happening, I don't know. But I decided to run to do what I got to do. I'm not running for something new. This is my last hurrah. I'm going to get in the game, lead with my chin, do whatever I got to do, ask the hard questions, push hard, not calculate whether I want to run for something new or push something to another city. It's got to be holistic, it's got to be regional, and that's what I would do, and put myself right smack in the middle and hold me accountable.
Thank you very much.
This is one of the primary issue that got me into this race, and I think everybody is concerned about homelessness and the dysfunction that we have seen come from LA County. As local contract cities, we rely on the county to deliver service. So when it fails, we feel it. We feel it intimately, and we feel it in our neighborhoods. In my community, we had to step up and fund our own services because we weren't getting the support that we needed from the county. We have street teams that go out every day of the week, connecting with people on the streets, meeting them where they are, identifying what it is they need, the kind of help they need, whether it's addiction recovery, mental health service, housing, you name it. And we connect them, we provide transportation, we provide housing, we contract for these services as your city does. Not all of these services are located in Malibu. Not all of these services are located in my city. We contract for those services. Perhaps my opponent thinks that you need to build a homeless shelter and a mental health treatment and a hospital and all of that in Malibu in order to directly serve on this issue. I don't think that's the case. There are reasons why we contract for these services. We work with the professionals who are delivering this service, and I appreciate that he wants to say that it's their money in Sacramento, but last I checked, it's the people's money that's being spent on these issues, and it should be spent on the issues that people are asking them to do something about. The reason he gets all animated but doesn't give you a direct answer is because he has no experience on how to actually deliver on this issue. In my community, year after year, because of what we've created, not just the street teams, but also working with our sheriff's department, we've actually created a contract, and your city can contract for this service too. I'm happy to talk with you about it if the council is interested. We created a contract, I authored this policy to have a mental health evaluation team dedicated in our community to be the first response on those calls for help, whether it's unhoused or people struggling with mental health issues. And that's a service that the entire county can offer. And in fact, the sheriff's department is very interested in seeing more cities contract for this service and directly invest in this service, because when we lead with the mental health evaluation teams, which are clinically trained social workers who are paired with a deputy, we have the leadership and the expertise, but we also have the safety backup in those circumstances. So we have both. And that's what we've piloted in my community. It's worked, and as I mentioned, about 80%, some years a little bit below, some years a little bit above, but about 80% of our identified unhoused population were able to get off the streets year after year. My frustration is that we don't see it happening in our big neighbor to the east and around and our south in Los Angeles. And we don't see these successful programs being replicated through the county. LAHSA is simply dysfunctional. It is not delivering, and the executive director was right to resign because it was not empowered with the authority to do what it needs to do on the issue. I don't need to convince you of that. We see the problems on our streets. And so that's what needs to be fixed. We need to get the money out of the county bureaucracy directly invested into the solutions in our communities that we need, work with the community partners that are delivering these solutions, that are providing the answers and delivering the response that we need in our communities, rather than shouting and throwing press releases and all of that. We just need to get to work and provide solutions. That's what I've done, and that's what I'm ready to scale for county. And you can come to my community, I'm happy to show you. We don't have 100% success rate, so you will see unhoused people in our community just like there are in yours, but I can show you what we've done, we track where they go, so we don't actually just push them over the border. We actually track which services they go to, which services they receive. We also have an inclusionary housing policy in my community, so we build permanent supportive housing in the community, and we have just recently purchased motels to provide more supportive transitional housing. So we have different housing options and services for the different needs that exist, and that's the model that needs to be scaled. Why LA County isn't helping all of our communities do this, I'm not sure, but I'm prepared to deliver.
I'm gonna open it up to audience questioning right now. I've got to, hold on a minute. Dear candidates, we got a late start here today because of the protests. Could you stay for an extra 15 minutes? I still want people to be able to meet with you in the patio. Okay, great. It tells me how many time. The first question is Zuma J, who sent, it's out there, and we'll be visiting outside. I ask you to keep your masks on because there's still a lot of people. I really don't want people to get BA5. There is not. I'll talk about security at the end, okay? Well, okay, we'll talk about, I'll get information that out to you then. Go ahead. Wait a minute. First, Zuma J was the first one to actually submit a question. Is Zuma, there, please. Can you give him the, okay.
Thank you, candidates, for coming. Zev Yaroslavsky was a great county council member for our area, and I'll leave you with this thought before my simple question. Zev quite often said 1% of the vote, 20% of my aggravation, and 50% of my time. That's how Malibu was for Zev, but he was active, and he was out here, and he understood the community. My direct question for either candidate or both candidates is, it was mentioned earlier, is will you help the city of Malibu, which represents the Santa Monica Mountains on the coast from PCH? Our LCP is constantly violated by the MRCA. It's happening in Latigo Canyon as we speak this weekend. It happened in Sycamore. It happens up and down the coast. And to this community, to have the ESHA violation part of the issue now is really disruptive, because when people camp in the ESHA, they bring their dogs and their kids and all the gack that comes with them, and it's left behind. Joe does not police the ESHA. That's the problem. Can you please address that? I know it's direct, and I know you both have hit on it a little bit, but for the people in the room here, a direct answer to that would be successful for you.
Thank you, Jefferson. Also, I'll mention for anyone, when you're actually up asking a question, it's okay to take your mask off, but then put it back on. Lindsey, do you want to take the first stab at that?
Sure, yes, I will absolutely be committed to that. I know that it's happening in Solstice Canyon. There's 2 other areas. Solstice Canyon, Latigo Canyon, and then Sweetwater Mesa Parcel is another area that is right around, that is also county jurisdiction, and so hopefully we'll be able to work to make sure that that the park rangers that I talked about are overseeing and create that strategic plan, so there is oversight there, and you're not experiencing the impacts that you've seen right now.
Yeah, the answer. Jefferson, where are you? Yeah, the answer is yes. I just put that into my promise book here, made a note on it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it's about the money, what Joe always wants, and making that happen. And I mean, I know how that works pretty well. And the other thing I'll say to you is that, you know, I have a young daughter who's going to be 2 years old in September 3rd, and we're going to move to Las Virgenes School District. So I'm going to be a lot closer in the community around and be available, you know what I mean? So we want to come to school out here. So I'll be around, I'll be available, and much closer to the community in terms of, you can come over to my house and we'll, whatever you got a problem.
We'll be part of the Las Virgenes Homeowners Association.
Thank you. Gary Hoffman had the next question. He's waited a long time to ask that.
Thanks. The present people that are on the Board of Supervisors, including Sheila, are all very bright. And yet they all voted 5-0 to allow camping in the Santa Monica Mountains, led by Sheila Kuehl. And Lindsey, you weren't exactly complete when saying the Coastal Commission changed the LCP, and that's the reason why there's camping involved, because the Board of Supervisors, if Sheila wanted to say, you know what, we voted against it once, we're going to vote it against it the second time, but they didn't. So my question really is this. With all the bright people that are sitting there, all aware of climate change, all aware of fires that are now worldwide because of climate change, and all aware of the fires that have ripped through California, why did they vote 5-0 to support camping in the mountains? What is the reason?
Good question. That's a good question.
So because I care about this issue and I want to give you a direct answer, and thank you, you're absolutely right. The county board did vote for it. And I was told the reasons they voted for it was there were provisions that were updated that did provide more protections, that if that didn't pass, it would provide more. Now, I want to be very clear. Understood.
I was the person who negotiated directly with Sheila and staff
Okay.
for the first time around.
Mhm.
Putting in those protections.
Okay.
It was pulling teeth,
I'm sorry.
and they were minimal,
Okay.
absolutely minimal, and it took 6 months of meeting with them once a month for hours at a time, along with the attorney.
I want to honor the question, and that's why I wanted to directly answer it, but I also want to say, I'm not the supervisor. I didn't vote for that. Because of this experience and because of the issues that I've heard that Malibu residents have experienced, I now have a much better understanding of how we get it right, and I am prepared to do that with and for you. So I understand you're very frustrated about the experience that you had, and if I were in your shoes, I can't say that I would feel any differently. I want you to really hear that. I am endorsed by a lot of people who don't agree with each other, let alone tell me what what I'm going to do in my role on the supervisor as a supervisor. So I want to be very clear. I am an independent voice who's come from working at the grassroots level, working in neighborhood meetings just like this one, to work with you to understand how we solve this problem.
But that's not my question.
Your question,
The question was,
why did they do it? And I can.
right people
Mm-hmm.
vote for camping in the Santa Monica
I.
Mountains? What was the pressure? Where did it come from that would violate common sense?
I appreciate that question, and I think that you should direct it to the supervisors who voted that way, because I can't tell you more than what I just shared.
Why don't you ask your pal?
I did ask, so I could offer you an answer, and that was the answer that I was given. And I'm sorry it's not to your satisfaction, because I am very clear about that, but it is not my answer because I wasn't there and I didn't cast the vote.
What was Sheila's answer to that?
Her answer was that they needed to, what they were advancing would provide protections that were required, and if they didn't pass it, then there would be even less protection.
I will say the subtext, Bob, before you answer, I will say the subtext of what's Gary's saying. The subtext is that the impression is that people are afraid, that our elected officials are afraid to vote against Joe Edmonston because he A, does fundraisers for them, and B, they're afraid he will deliver the environmental vote against them. I'll give you an opportunity to answer that further, but let me give, if you want.
I don't know if I agree with that that approach. I'll give you a straight up answer to it, because when Bert called me and I saw this, I'm like, holy smoly, it didn't have to sit into a big political analysis. It was pretty common sense to me. And I had the exact same question. How the heck did 5 members do this? So I called up Catherine Barger and I said, hey, how did 5 members? It was Sheila wanted it. And what happens is there's a culture in the board, which I don't agree, that you divide the county by 5. I think that's stupid. I think there's certain areas on land use and a few small areas, but big issues that involve the whole jurisdiction should be taken over, whether in the areas that I would potentially represent or others. It's that culture I don't like. And so she demanded it. Now, I think the reason why she demanded it, and it'll probably be a little in politic, but I'll give you an honest answer, whether you agree or not, is that there's this sense of this is an entitled community and you want to make sure people have access, and that you guys are stopping that access, right? And so it's I'm not saying sorry, I'm just telling you what the sentiment is that I surmise, because I'm trying to give you a straight up, not just a bunch of noise stuff. And there's this attitude. I don't think it was Joe doing it. I think it's the culture, and I think everybody says, I want access and I want this. If you look at my opponent's statement after I did my statement, it kind of dances that. It's not as clear. I made my statement very direct and very clear. If you look at what her statement is, and a couple of lawyers in the room take a look at it, it dances that, because she's dancing that politics. And I think that the risk of fire is so overwhelming and compelling. It is not a danceable issue. It is not a danceable issue. You have to come down on one side or the other, and that's what I think, and that's why I think it happened, and that's the homework that I did.
Thank you, Bob. Pam,
Thank you for being here real quick. This campaign is about money too. And I want to ask you, because when I ran for supervisor, they spent millions and millions of dollars. So number one, how much money have you fundraised to date? Be as exact as you can. Number two, where did the majority of your money come from?
Sure. I'm not aware of my current account to date for this November race, but I raised close to $800,000 for the June race, about half of what my opponent raised for his race, and between his direct campaign and his independent expenditures, they outspent us about 3 to 1. The majority of my money comes from individuals, both in and out of the district, but all within LA County, most within LA County, and so that's where I get the money.
What is your current balance?
I'm not aware of the current balance to date.
Campaign manager's here. Does he know?
Do you know it? Yeah, I don't know the current balance to date. But I'll.
Yeah,
I really
hello?
don't.
Yeah, I'll tell you everything you want to know. I raised in the primary, the total amount was 1.2 million. I got in the race very late. My opponent was in the race a year and a half ahead of me. Under the law, you only can take $1,500 per individual. So you can't, and you can also take corporate money, so there's corporate money in there too. $1,500. Of the $1.2 million that I've raised, I had $250,000 left in an account in Sacramento that I had for a controller account. So I transferred that. So that basically makes it $950. And then of the $950 I raised, about $150 of it was called, people give you $1,500. But if they give you $3,000, you have to put it into the general. So about $150,000 of that went into my general account. So I raised about $800,000 that I raised in the primary myself. There were independent expenditure committees. I've looked at some of their reports. I have not seen them. This week we'll see the underlying numbers. But yes, it was a lot of money from independents that put money in. And if you look at and then right now, my report, which we by the way, when you ask our balances, we had to file our reports. They were due on Friday, okay? Give me a frickin' break. They were due. Whatever, they're due. Your accountants have them together. If you don't have the information, and I think my report shows about $200,000. I did not go out and raise money because I spent my month of June in Sacramento. After the election, I went up working with Ben Allen every day from 6 in the morning till midnight to get that plastics bill done. The governor said it was impossible. We worked on it for 4 years. Ben Allen and I and Luce Rivas worked around the clock. I did not run around and make phone calls for money. I did not engage because I didn't think it was ethical. I did my work, and I focused, and then we got out of Sacramento on July 1st, and I started working in the campaign to put my campaign together. At my first fundraiser at my house on the August 11th, if anybody wants to come, it's in my backyard. And I'm starting to do the fundraising for the campaign. That's kind of where I'm at. Okay?
thank you very much. You, Doug? Okay. I'll try to get to everybody. Just. See.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Candidates, thank you very much for coming, but I'm one of the public safety commissioners here in Malibu. I talk to the sheriff's deputies all the time, and I want to tell you about something that they're telling me is going to come, and that is we have deputies working 5 mandatory days a month overtime. That means they're working 6 days a week. They're telling me they're working 12 days, 14 days straight without a day off. They're burned out, they're worn out, and then the Sheriff's Department tells us as the city of Malibu, guys, contracts are frozen. We don't have any more resources to put toward your request for additional people. By the way, thank you very much for 5 additional deputies from West Hollywood. And, by the way, Captain C2, who is now with us. But what this is telling me is that we're running out of people. And the Sheriff's Training Department, I believe, only has 3 classes this year. So we have virtually no one coming up from the bottom up, plus it takes years to be an effective deputy. The fire department has got overtime numbers that blow your mind. What this is telling us there is, in both cases, boots on the ground. We're paying overtime instead of having sufficient people. So when we have a Woolsey fire, there are not enough deputies to man extra cars, not enough firemen to jump in the spare engines. We're out of people. What are you going to do about it?
We have to make sure that there are resources invested in training and making sure that we get more folks into the ranks. I know the county just directly invested more money into training to bring more people in. And I also have communicated contract cities, the funding is not frozen. The county CEO, the Contract Cities Association actually went directly to the county CEO to challenge this, because there were cities like Norwalk that did ballot measures to raise money to pay for additional deputies. So the funding wasn't coming from the county, it was coming from their city. And they were told the same thing by their captain, and the county CEO told them that actually they can directly hire. So it's not accurate that they cannot hire, that there's a hiring freeze, but it is possible, but you are absolutely correct that there isn't enough people, there aren't enough people currently in the pipeline. So we have to invest in training. We have to make sure that that training is available, and that we're doing recruitment all throughout the district and throughout the county to make sure that the law enforcement force that serves our neighborhoods actually looks like and addresses the needs in our community, and so people actually understand where they're serving.
Yeah, your point is really quite brilliant, because the reality is when I talked to this Deputy Sheriff's Association who've endorsed me, we talked at length about this exact problem with respect to costs. So here you have all these people making hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtime. It's crazy numbers, and yet you have less people on the street, you have them burnt out, you got a gigantic management problem. The firefighters who endorsed me told me exactly the same thing. So you're downward spiral. It's just stupid on top of stupid. And what happens with the police is that the Board of Supervisors currently are anti-police. They hate this sheriff, and they're not giving him any resources. I talked to every captain, and they're having huge problems. And it's the same reason why the current supervisor won't add more deputies here. That's why I said I'm going to take those deputies from West Hollywood and bring them out here. They won't do it. And it's a leadership problem. Now, how do you solve it? Well, here's the budget for the state, for the county. And what's interesting is there's money. It's really quite interesting. Now, again, when you look at where the county money goes to, 34% goes to health, 25% to public assistance, and it breaks it down to where the money goes. Now, what's interesting is because property values are up, 5.3 additional percent, $350.9 million additional property tax this year. Because values have gone up, property taxes have been assessed. It's not a Prop 13 problem, it's just a valuation problem. And also, because properties are being sold, there's more cash. We expect it to be significantly more. So the bottom line is, it's a leadership priority decision, and where do you put that priority? And I'm a public safety person, I'm a fire person. That's why I'm endorsed by these groups that are very sophisticated. Someone, unknown caller. Who's calling? It's Henry.
Vale, is that you?
In. So in any event, that's there's a roadmap to it. But the bottom line is the current structure is dumb and doesn't achieve the deliverables. You're going exactly the wrong direction. And secondly, if you had people with different priorities and different values, those problems could be solved.
Thank you. I'm going to make a tough decision and allow only one more question. In the interest of you all being able to talk directly to the candidates, the gentleman back there at the final row. You. Okay, here. Hap, can you here?
Thank you. I can do it without it.
That's okay.
Okay. Scott Dietrich. I'm in the Public Works Commission and the Homeless Task Force. So I'm involved in the city. One of the big problems we have 15 million visitors. You all know that here. We serve the county for all these visitors that come in, right? Yep. But when we became a city, we lost 17 highway patrol cars. We had a highway patrol office. Now, cities aren't supposed to have the highway patrol, but we have a unique situation, right? We have all the visitors from the county But we don't get that support. We lost the CHP, which is why, as Lindsey said, we get the street racing. They've closed down Pacific Coast Highway to have their races. We fund the LA County Beach Patrol. We fund 2 guards for the library. That's over $1 million. We need the county's help. We need the CHP back. And the question is, if you are elected, will you commit to lobbying the state, because it's up to them, to get the CHP back for us? Thank you.
Okay. Lindsey?
Absolutely. You have the state in the room, so you should ask him what he's done about it. But I think that we absolutely need to make sure you have the resources for the CHP. You need to make sure that you have the resources for your library. Our city just built our own library as well, and we invested our own city resources to make that happen. But we need the resources to make sure that it continues to be maintained. We need to make sure that you have the resources on the beach. I spoke with Pastor Ron in Santa Monica, who's been doing a lot of the outreach dealing with homeless issues on the beach in Santa Monica, and he's talked about how he wants to expand, but he hasn't been able to because of county bureaucracy. He wants to provide more help. We need to make sure that you all have the help and support and resources that you need. We can't just keep, my community is like yours. We've been told by the county countless times, we have the resources, we should fend for ourselves. That's unacceptable. The county is a social safety net for all of us, and it needs to be providing the resources that we are due. The money that we pay in and the money that we need to provide this wonderful recreational area that is a gem for the rest of the county and for people all over the world who come to visit Malibu. We need to make sure that you have the resources and support you need to upkeep that. It is not solely the city's responsibility to do that. And I'm prepared to work with you to make sure that you have the resources you need to take care of your community, period.
Yeah, as I said before, you know, and it's just the way you partner with people, you show respect, and how you work with them. Senator Stern has worked extremely hard introducing legislation dealing with the crackdowns legally. Also, I got to take a look on the budget, but I believe he got a bunch of money in the budget for CHP. I'll circle back with you to find out, but I think he's actually done that. So as majority leader, I helped him do that, but I didn't want to step on his toes. And particularly as I'm running for office, I think it's unethical for me to get out there and use the power of government to try to play that issue. So I backed him up. We made sure the stuff passed. This is happening. I'll double check and we'll circle back with you on the exact money in the budget. But I just was looking at the legislation and where it was to get some details. But it's something he put as a priority because he represents the communities here. And our job is to respect him and to support him and to make sure this stuff gets done with him leading the way.
I'm gonna offer you each candidate 30-second closing statement. And at that point, we can go out into the patio and we can visit.
I'm not sure I think they may have left.
I think it is, well, we're going out in the patio because it's outdoors, it's safer, okay? And it's bigger, okay? After, and then in terms of security afterwards, Hap, why don't you tell them what you told me?
I was told that there's an alternate exit off our patio here if anyone doesn't want to deal with the excitement that's going on in the front entrance.
I think we outlived them, huh?
I just checked, there were a handful of people straggling out in the parking lot, but for the most part, it has calmed down. What's that? Moderate.
Okay, so are the police officers still outside?
Last I checked a few minutes ago, there were still
Yeah.
sheriff's deputies out there.
Yeah, okay, so you'll have choices. You can go out the front, you can go out this way. But let's, 30 seconds so that you can get to actually meeting the people. I think you started, Lindsey?
I really appreciate the conversation that we've had here today, and I look forward to it not ending here today because there are a lot of issues that you clearly are facing that we need to partner on and work on together. I am committed to being present to Malibu, to being present in every part of this district because it's about bringing people together. My opponent said that he hasn't gone to Democratic clubs or the Democratic Party because he was endorsed by law enforcement. He went, he just lost. He also has taken money from Sempra, from PG&E, from Exxon, from Tesoro, from Texaco. This is who's funding his campaign, and I noticed he didn't mention that when he was asked about the funding for his campaign. And that's because The climate is not his priority issue. For me, it is. That's why I'm endorsed by LALCV, the League of Conservation Voters, Sierra Club, the Center for Biological Diversity, and so much more. We need to take these issues seriously. We need to stop playing partisan politics and start acting on practical solutions that actually deliver for the problems that we're facing together. We need to bring communities together, not further divide us. That's why I'm here trying to offer sincere answers to your questions. And I can't account for things that I didn't vote on, but I can tell you I am directly committed to working with you to make sure that the future that is in LA County is one that Malibu can be proud of, that you have a seat at the table, and that you have a partner in the office that you are directly in communication with on a regular basis. I look forward to being that partner with you in the work that we will do together, and I look forward to a brighter future for LA County together.
As I said, I'm not running for something else. This is my last stop to do the hard work, to take the hits, to not do the kabuki and the dance, depending upon where the wind blows in one direction or the other, which I've seen so much in politics over the years. I just want to share, as I kind of tried to start in the beginning, this is my DNA, public service. This is what I like. I had a bunch of ideas to go out, despite what otherwise was being represented, to get back in the renewable energy business. I spent 12 years working in climate change issues all around the world. If you saw any of my commercials, I was listed by Guardian magazine as one of the 50 people to save the planet. What's happening in politics is that interest groups have gotten too much power. They sit there and they play their game, and I'm sorry, I'm not a potted plant. And there's a couple of various groups that I didn't do what they said, because you can't ask questions. You can't probe. It's you do it, or we're going to oppose you, and we're going to send out mailers against you and the like. So look, my record speaks for itself. I've spent 30 years working on the climate change issues, which are really, really important to me personally. It's one of the reasons I came back to government. And I just, it's what political consultants tell you to say when you're in politics and the game that gets played. The last thing I want to share with you is that I think this is important. This is a self-published book that I did when I was leaving government, and it indicates who I am. The title of the book is Working Clothes, and it comes from a Henry Kaiser quote that says, "Problems are nothing more than opportunities in working clothes." That's me. That's what I do. I work on the toughest stuff. Again, I'm not somebody who gets out and does press conferences and goes around and joins every organization to try to build relationships to get support. I do the homework. I do the homework. And so this is over 100 op-eds that I've written for 30 years. It's self-published. I didn't put this out. Over 30 years. And basically the first half of the book are ideas that worked. And guess what? The second half of the book that my opposition will probably find are ideas that I tried that didn't work. But you know what? All of us in life need to try everything. That's the problem with politics. You go poll stuff and you only want to do stuff that wins, that make you look good, that you're too hard to take a risk. Well, I take risks. And guess what? If I'm wrong, I course correct, I learn, and I grow. And so I share this with you because I spent all these years, starting with the Watts Riot, not the Watts Riots, when I was working for the AJC back in '92, my first thing for the Jewish Journal, and all of these different problems, and talked about it to be able to get public servants to think deeper, to do the homework, to do the homework, to do the homework. That's my DNA. And that's what I do behind the scenes, just like I did with Ben Allen for the last 3 weeks. Instead of politicking and raising money and stuff, I did the homework. And that's the right thing to do. And that's what I'll do in this job. That's why I'm running. And I cannot tell everybody how much I appreciate you taking the time out of your weekend to be here to listen to us and to be a participant in the important discussion of democracy. Thank you.
I thank you again, both of you, for coming. I don't know about everyone here, but it's been a pleasure meeting both of you. I think we have a very tough decision. I think we have two good candidates that offer some different ideas. And I wish I had a mug to present to you. We didn't have time. But I could present you both with an autographed mask from the Malibu Democratic Club in honor. But in any event, enjoy. There's not many refreshments again because of COVID, but there's a lovely patio outside. You have an opportunity to meet your constituents. And if you need any help getting out, we have a security guard on duty, and the library does too.